Hello friends, welcome back to my channel Mukesh English, and this is your favorite YouTuber Mukesh Soni. Dear friends, in this video I'm going to explain the complete play titled All My Sons by Arthur Miller, the famous American playwright. And this play has the three important it's a three-act play. It is a three-act play. So how will I describe here? First, I'll explain the play act wise, and finally at the end of the video I'll give you a very brief summary. So do watch the full video. That's going to help you to understand this play. And this play is in the syllabus of, I think, third semester BBA General English SEP syllabus under Bangalore City University. So let's begin it. Very first, we should know about the author. Arthur Miller was a famous American playwright, essayist, and very much regarded as the greatest dramatist of the 20th century. His plays explore themes like family relationships, moral responsibility, social pressure, and the struggles of ordinary people. And some of his best-known works include Death of a Salesman, the most important one, Death of a Salesman, The Crucible, right, All My Sons, and A View from the Bridge. So, through his powerful storytelling method, Arthur Miller always questioned the American dream and highlighted the important social and moral issues, making his works timeless and relevant. Now, before the play begins, we should know a brief background of this play exactly. So there's a one important character. The protagonist of the play is here, Joe Keller. Joe Keller and his business partner, Steve Deaver. They are running a factory, and in this factory, they make the airplane parts. What is the timing here? During the World War II. So one day, a batch of defective cylinder heads was discovered. There was some defect. So there was a pressure from the army to give the fast delivery. Steve, Steve telephone Joe Keller and asking him what to do. What to do? There are few parts have some sort of defect. What to do and how to fulfill the demand here. So both of them are the partners. Joe Keller, he said that you only take decision, and he said that he was sick due to the flu. So he told Steve, what did he instruct? He told Steve to weld, to do the welding to the cracks, and just ship the parts. Means to say, do the shipping of the parts, send the parts. So the parts were shipped, and because of that defective parts, what happened? 21 soldiers they died in the air crash. 21 soldiers, 21 pilots, they died in the air crash during the World War II, right? So now both men were arrested, Joe and Steve. However, however, managed to get out by claiming, however, Joe, he tried to manage to come out of the case, and he claimed that Steve had taken the decision, and he said that he was suffering from flu. He said that no, I didn't call Steve and I didn't give any instruction. He said lie, and somehow he just came out of the case, and Steve Dever, he got acquitted, right? But Joe was acquitted, means to say he there was a verdict of not guilty, but Steve had to go to jail. He had to go to prison. So this scandal had ruined the family life of Steve Dever. Meanwhile, Joe's younger son Larry, who was a pilot who never returned from the war, and there was a report that his younger son Larry was missing. Joe's wife Kat, she still refuses to accept her son Larry's death. She was still not believing that no, my son is still alive. She was not believing about the death of her son Larry, because Larry was also pilot. Maybe in due to that um, defective parts, Larry's plane also got crashed. So this is the background of the story All My Sons, of the play All My Sons. Now let's have a glance at the characters. So Joe Keller is the owner of the factory who made airplanes parts during the World War II, and he's about 60 years old. Kat Keller, who is Joe's wife, who is convinced that her younger son Larry is alive. She's about 50 years old. Chris Keller, Chris Keller is the son who loves Anne. He is about 32 years old. Anne Deaver. Anne Deaver is the Anne Deaver is the daughter of Steve Deaver's, right? Steve Deaver, Joe Keller's partner, and Chris Keller and Endeavor, they love each other, and she's Chris' fiance. She's about 26 years old. George Deaver is Endeavor's brother, means to say Steve Deaver's son. Got it now? Who is Steve Deaver? Steve Deaver, Joe Keller's partner. Endeavor, George Deaver, who are they? They are the children of Steve Deaver. Endeavor, she's the fiance of Chris. Chris is the son of Joe and Kat, right? Mother. So Joe and Kat Keller's other child, who is not named here, but she appears in the play. Then we have few more characters. Bert. Bert, a neighbor, who is a neighbor who appears mostly in the play's context, maybe son of Jim and Sue. So Jim Bayless is doctor. Sue Bellis, Jim's wife, so husband wife, they are the neighbor. Frank Luby, he's also neighbor who is interested in astrology. And Lydia Luby, she's also Frank. She's the wife of Frank Luby. So Jim Sue, husband wife. Frank Lydia, husband wife. So four are the neighbors. One is also neighbor. Steve, as I told you, Steve, a character mentioned talking with George and discussing family matters. Another character we have here, Dr. Jim Ballis, who is a doctor. So these are the characters. Now let's discuss the all the three acts in detail. So it's a three-act play, All My Sons. The play begins in the Keller's backyard. Keller's means to say the Keller family in the backyard on a Sunday morning, 3 years after the war. The previous night, there was a storm which has knocked down an apple tree which was planted in the memory of Larry. So 3 years are over of this war, and still the Cat Miller, she thinks that her younger son will return. He's still alive. So in his memory, an apple tree is planted here, and due to the war, what happened? The apple tree has fallen down. I'm sorry, due to the storm, the apple tree has fallen down. Joe Keller is introduced as a very friendly, talkative man who reads the want ads in the newspaper, and he's chatting with his neighbors. So, neighbor Dr. Jim Bellis, he complains about his unfulfilling medical practice. Then another neighbor, Frank Luby, who believes in astrology, and he's preparing a horoscope for Larry at Kat's request. So once Larry comes, he'll prepare his horoscope. And another neighbor, little Bert, who is a boy who plays cops and robbers with Joe. So pretending Joe has a jail in his basement. So that shows Joe's hidden guilt here. So this is a very background in the Act 1. Nothing much is happening in the Act 1. So Chris Keller, who is Joe's surviving son. So one son who is already no more during the war, that Larry. So Chris Keller is the left out son who confides to Joe that he wants to marry Anne Deaver. Anne Deaver, who is Steve Deaver's daughter, Steve Deaver, who is in jail, and who has come to visit from New York. So Anne Deaver was once Larry's girlfriend. Joe supports Chris, but he warns him that Kat will never allow it since she still believes Larry's alive. Right? So actually, Chris, he loves Cat, he loves Anne, and Joe says that your mother will not allow, because your mother thinks that Larry is still alive and Anne Diva should marry with Larry, right? So Cat Keller, she enters. Who is Cat Keller? Joe Keller's wife. She's superstitious and emotional. She's convinced that the broken tree is a sign that Larry is still alive, and she insists Larry must return because otherwise Joe would be guilty of killing his own son through the scandal, right? So she still thinks that Larry should come back, her younger son should come back. Now Anne Dever, she comes, she's very cheerful but firm that she has cut ties with her father Steve, believing him guilty. So her father Steve, who was a partner with Joe Keller, who is in jail, and Anne Dever doesn't like her father. She feels that her father is guilty. She does not wait for Larry, and she has a feeling for Larry's brother Chris. Joe retells the story of the trial, blaming Steve as a weak and indecisive, saying that he himself would have scrapped the parts. So he tells the whole story, what happened, how the parts were done, repaired by her father, and so somehow um, in the eyes of Anne Dever, he becomes like blameless, or he becomes very much clean shit. So Chris and Anne, they share a private moment. Chris proposes and Anne accepts. The joy is interrupted by a phone call. What's a phone call? George Dever, that is Anne's brother, has just visited the father in prison, and he is coming over with some serious news. She gets a call, and on the call, her brother, George Dever, he says that I just now gone to the prison to meet our father, Steve Dever, and I got some news which I would like to share with you. Right? So this is how the Act 1 gets over. Act 2, that evening, Keller family is unsettled. That evening, evening. Why? Chris and Kat, they argue about Anne. Kat Keller, Joe Keller's wife, she clings to the belief that Larry's alive. Chris believes that it's time to face the reality. Sue Bellis, Jim's wife, both neighbor, they speak to Anne. Sue Bellis, she speaks to Anne privately. She bitterly complains that Chris' idealistic talk about social responsibility has made her husband unhappy with his well-paying practice. She says that she wants Chris and Anne to leave town after marriage. She says that because of Chris, my husband's practice has got disturbed, so better after marriage, these guys should run away. She also suggests that many neighbors they still suspect Joe of guilt. So this neighbor, Sue Bellis, who is Jim's wife, she says that many neighbors in this colony they say that Joe Keller is guilty, not Steve Dever is guilty, right? So tension starts rising when George Dever, Steve Dever's son, he arrives from the train station, very angry after visiting his father, and George claims Joe was the real guilty man. He explains Steve's story. What's the Steve story? He says that my father called Joe when the cracked parts appeared, the airplane's cracked parts appeared, but Joe told my father to weld them due to the welding and ship them, and he pretended in the court that he was sick to come to the factory. So, George Dever, who came to know that his father is not guilty, Joe Keller is guilty. So, Chris, Joe Keller's son, he's defending his father very passionately. So, George is pressurizing Anne to leave from there, right? Now Joe enters and he greets George very warmly, and he's trying to calm him down. And Joe showcases Steve as very weak, unreliable, and he says that he was always prone to do the mistake. George begins to doubt his father's version. See here, Joe is going to brainwash George George Dever's mind, and he says that no, you don't know about your father. Your father used to do so many mistakes. Now George starts to suspect what his father has told in the prison, in the prison. right? Try to understand. It's quite complicated story. Then Cat, who is Cat? Cat Miller. Cat Miller is Joe Keller's Cat Miller. Cat Miller is Joe Keller's wife. She comes here and she says Joe has not been sick in 15 years. See here, she's going to break some monotony. She says, no, no, not at all. It's been 15 years. Joe has never been suffered from any of the flu. George immediately realizes that this destroys Joe's alibi of having the flu during the scandal. Means to say, he created the scene that he was suffering from flu, so he didn't go to factory, he didn't receive any call. Joe is trying to cover it, but finally, the truth has come out. Chris is shaken. He accuses his father of knowing sending defective parts, killing 21 pilots. Now Joe's lie has come out just by one statement by Joe's wife, Kat Miller. She said, no, my husband has never have been suffered from any of the flu from the past 15 years. Then suddenly Chris thinks, how come? My father told that he was suffering from flu, that's why he couldn't go there. Then Chris says, no, because of my father, 21 pilots killed. He shouts that Joe has murdered not just strangers but also my brother Larry. Since Larry never come home after the scandal, Chris storms out in rage and he gets very upset. So the whole family has come to know Joe Miller, Joe Keller is a Joe Keller is a murderer, is a guilty. So Act 3, it's very late at night. The Keller household, the whole Keller family is in turmoil. Kat Keller, Joe's wife, she's waiting anxiously for her son Chris, who has not returned since this news has come out. Dr. Jim Bellis, the neighbor, he comes by and he quietly tells her he has always known Joe was guilty. Even the neighbor also says that yes, we know Joe was guilty. So did. That's the reason that this has affected Chris a lot. He predicts Chris will eventually compromise and accept the situation, just as Jim himself has learned to compromise in his life. Then Joe Keller insists he only acted for his family's safety. Then Joe Keller says that whatever I have done for the favor of my family. He argues that he did it all so Chris could inherit a secure business. He says that I've done all for my son Chris so that Chris could have very safe business, secure business. Kat Keller, she warns him that Chris believes in something bigger than family, that he has social responsibility to all people. However, Joe Keller cannot see beyond his family. He declares that if there is something bigger than father and son, he will shoot himself. He says that, okay, if you guys think that something is bigger than I or than any son or father, then definitely I'll shoot myself, he says. And Steve Dever's daughter, she decides the time has come to end Kat's denial. She reveals a letter Larry wrote to her before his final flight. In this letter, Larry confessed that he could not face returning home after hearing of his father's crime. Out of shame, he planned to kill himself by crashing his plane. So finally Anne, she brought a letter. She says that I got a letter from Larry. In that letter, he wrote that he had come to know the crime was done by my father, so intentionally, willingly, he killed himself by crashing his plane. Chris returns broken, conflicted. He says he doesn't want to jail his father but cannot forgive him either. Anne gives him Larry's letter, which he reads loud to Joe. At last, Joe Keller understands the truth. Larry, his younger son, killed himself because of him. The 21 pilots who died were not strangers, they were all his sons. Joe says he will go to police and accept responsibility. Instead, instead, he goes inside. First he says that okay, I'll go to police, I'll take all the responsibility. Before that he goes inside. There was a gunshot heard. Joe Keller has killed himself. He has shot himself. The play ends with Cat Keller telling Chris he must not destroy himself with guilt. She argues him to live on even after the tragedy. So, what's the conclusion? The plot has the following tragic arc. Number one, a family secret that Joe's guilt hidden for years is gradually now exposed. Every character is contributing here. The neighbors, they are hinting at suspicion. Sue exposes the resentment. George brings his father's side. Kat's arrival reveals the truth. Anne delivers Larry's suicide letter. If the cat would have not told that since 15 years he has not been suffering of any of the flu, the guilt would have not come out. The climax comes with the revelation of the letter, and the resolution is Joe's suicide. The final message is very much clear. Responsibility cannot stop at family. It must extend, it must extend to all humanity. So that's the explanation of Act 1, 2, and 3. Now we are going to summarize the whole play very briefly so that you can view all the threads easily. Now let's summarize the whole play very quickly. The story takes place in America shortly after the World War II at the home of Joe Keller, who is a factory owner. Joe lives with his family Cat and their son Chris. The other son Larry, who was a pilot who went missing in the war. Cat strongly believes Larry is still alive even though everyone thinks he's dead. Ann Deaver, who used to be Larry's girlfriend, comes to visit Keller's family. Chris loves Anne and wants to marry her. But Kat doesn't like this idea because she believes that marrying Anne would mean admitting Larry's death. Anne's father, Steve Deaver, who is in a prison. Years ago, faulty airplane parts from Joe's factory caused the deaths of 21 pilots. Steve Deaver was blamed and jailed, while Joe was found innocent. Both were the partners. But when Anne's brother George arrives, he brings the truth. What's the truth? Joe was actually the one who allowed the broken parts to be sent out, and he let Steve take the blame. Chris, Joe's son, shocked, feels betrayed by his father, and then shows Kat a letter from Larry. In the letter, Larry says he was going to kill himself because of his father's crime. Finally, Joe realizes the weight of what he has done, not only to the pilots but to his own family. And he takes his own life, he shoots himself. So, in short, what we can say here, the play All My Sons by Arthur Miller is about a man's secret crime during the war and how it destroys his family when the truth comes out. It shows a conflict between personal gain and moral responsibility. So, dear friends, this is how I've tried my best to summarize and to explain All My Sons, the important play by Arthur Miller, act wise as well as the summary. Also, hope you have found this video important, significant, and useful. So, share this video to your friends, to your classmates, and subscribe the channel for more videos. Have an eye at the playlist for the remaining videos of third semester BBA General English under Bangalore City University SEP syllabus from the year 2025. Thank you so much.